Today we are taking a look at the 2017 Specialized Tarmac SL5 Comp, and we want to know, can this bike still keep up with the latest and greatest bikes? We sat down with a local rider who's been putting in some serious miles and watts into this bike to find out what he likes, doesn't like, and most importantly, if this bike is fast. This is Real Race Bikes, brought to you by Bespoke Endurance. This is a 2017 Specialized Tarmac SL5 Comp disc. It features a FACT 10R carbon frame, Ultegra 11-speed mechanical group set. It has a 5236 chainring paired with an 1128 cassette in the back. It's got Hunt Limitless carbon 50mm wheels and weighs approximately 19 pounds. The rider has 175mm crank arms. The cockpit has a Zipp two-piece bar and stem combo with a 130mm stem and 38mm bars. The tires are GP5000s, tubeless, 28mm, and the rider is running 60 PSI. Great. All right, so who are you?
My name is James Duval. I'm a Cat 3 racer. I picked up my Specialized Tarmac SL5 in early 2021, so I've had it just about 5 years now. I got it used for $2,000, so kind of a deal, I would consider at the time. And this has been my go-to race bike for the past 5 years.
What were you on before this?
Before this, I was racing a Continental Super 6 Evo.
Okay. And about how many miles do you think you've put into this bike?
Right around 20,000.
Okay. Awesome. So a long-term review. That's perfect.
Yes, exactly. This has been the race bike, the training bike. This has been my, before the do-it-all bike that has hit the industry, you know, that term for your road bike, this has been my do-it-all bike. It came with the Specialized, just like alloy wheels that comes with the bike when you purchase it, and those are not particularly great. So the first big upgrade I made here was to Hunt carbon wheels, 50mm front and back. I think that's one of the best bang for your buck upgrades that you can make to your bike. Second thing, I have Asioma Duo power pedals, so very accurate power reading on those. And then just moving up from there from the wheels to the tires. I think when I started racing back in 2021, a lot of people were still on 26mm tires, and it's just kind of gone up from there. So I'm on 28s now. Eventually probably moving to 30s, as a lot of people are currently racing on 30s, just with you get better grip and you can run lower pressures. But yeah, it rolls great.
Okay. What size is this?
This is a 58 centimeter.
58. Okay.
Yes.
Because I've noticed you've got a really long stem up here, or bar up here.
Yeah.
So tell me a little about your cockpit setup you've got going on here.
Sure. So with it being a 2017, this was, I think, before a lot of like integrated cockpits were made popular. So I've got the two-piece bar and stem. It's a Zipp 130mm stem, so it's relatively long. I have a long torso. I'm a tall guy, so I need to be kind of stretched out on the bike when I'm on it. Carbon bars, carbon stem, so just a little bit lighter, for the racing, and it works great.
So where do you feel like this bike really shines the best?
Yeah, so I do primarily crit and road racing. Riding mid-pack holds its speed, or even if you're on the front of the peloton, once you get up to speed, this thing is just cruising. You don't really have to put down a lot of power to be able to hold the speeds that you need to during a race, in a criterium or a road race. The handling in a crit, you can turn on a rail on this thing. So I basically have full confidence when I'm leaning 30 plus miles an hour into a turn, a couple inches away from the curb. I've crashed on this, I think, at least one, I think a couple times, and I don't know if they just made them a little bit different back in 2017, but this thing has survived with no issues. I mean, so far it's been amazing in all the racing that I've done. So even though it's a 2017, they were still thinking about aero at that time. That's not something they just like all of a sudden came up with, aerodynamics,
Yeah.
and for bikes. So I would say it holds its speed very well.
How does the 11-speed mechanical work out?
I just like haven't really felt a need to switch over to electronic shifting. I know it's there. I know that people rave about it and say it's wonderful. To me, it's just like one less thing I have to charge on my bike. You already charge occasionally the pedals, the head unit, the lights. So, and the actual shifting, power or mechanism itself is not really that different. The races that I'm in or that I'm doing at the level I'm doing at Cat 3, it's not really going to make that much of a difference if I'm shifting down a quarter of a second slower maybe. So for what it is, the Ultegra mechanical I think, does more than a good enough job for the racing that I'm doing.
Is there anything where you feel like this thing falls short for you?
So with it being 2017, it does have quick release axles, not a full like threaded through axle, which on the pluses makes it very easy to take the wheels on and off. However, with a threaded through axle, it's just that much more secure to the bike. So occasionally I will get like front rotor, disc rubbing, if you're taking the wheel on and off a fair amount. So, if you're swapping the tire or doing a sealant refresh, that can be a little bit of an annoyance.
How does it climb?
That's probably one of the bigger drawbacks of the bike. So it's not really a bike geared for climbing. It's a bit on the heavier side at 19 pounds. So I have done a few road races on it that have been on the hillier side, but if you were like a pure climber or someone that's going for climbing KOMs all the time, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this bike. But it still gets the job done on the hills.
Does the SL5, being a 2017, does it have the clearance for 30s?
So that is one of the drawbacks. So right now these 28s, they blow up to about 30 mils.
Okay.
At 60 psi. I could run a 30 mil in the front and probably get by. It's the rear tire clearance that is quite close and probably wouldn't be able to handle it. There would likely just be a little bit of rubbing, or if there's any debris that was ever caught in between the tire and the frame, that would not be a good time. So kind of capped at 28s here, which is probably one of the biggest downsides on the bike. I would say that I'm going to ride this bike into the ground. So, whenever this bike kind of craps out on me is when I'll look for a new bike. But until then, this thing does the job and does it well.
Would you recommend the SL5, or would you recommend getting a newer generation Tarmac if you stay in the Tarmac line?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend this bike. It's been fantastic for all the racing I've done. Super reliable. Holds its speed amazingly. Pretty snappy if you're putting power down. The one maybe downside is the climbing, just because it is on the heavier side. But if you are looking for a used bike, especially like a used race bike, and you don't want to necessarily shell out the kind of money you would need to for a top tier 2025 bike, this is an amazing bike to ride. Because it is a 2017, and like now you have like all these integrated parts with newer bikes where it can be very difficult to swap. If you want to get a different stem length, you have to get an entirely new cockpit on your bike. Whereas here, like I can just swap this stem for a shorter one or a longer one. That's a 15-minute job. Or if I want to get narrower handlebars, like that is way easier to do than on a bike that everything is integrated. So
last question, probably the most important question everyone's been waiting for: is this bike fast?
Yes, this bike is definitely fast. In a race, putting power down, this thing is going to snap forward for you. In a crit, you can rail a corner, and this is a fast bike.
Got a race bike that you think deserves the spotlight? Drop us a DM or leave us a comment, and we can feature your bike on the channel.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to Bespoke Endurance on YouTube.